war and you saw
you're talking about where the general in the war, I don't know if it was a general or if it was a high-level police official, shot the guy right, and they captured that photograph. Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially during war, Vietnam and other things. Oh my God, the photos that came out that photojournalists captured. Thank God they were there to capture the real story. So the job is there, and that's what we're trained to do is be photojournalists and just like reporters tell the story. We're not there to take sides.
Right. And I think a lot of people even credit possibly even that shot as being one of the shots that put an end to the war. I know a lot of people, when I was a kid, that would have been in the 60s, because I'm now in my late 50s, but in the 60s, a lot of people credit the whole images that people saw of the dogs and the water on the civil rights struggle as being the kind of things that crystallized the nation's view of what was going on. And I'm even wondering the same thing with some of the shots we're seeing coming out of the COVID battle, because we're seeing some very poignant shots coming out of the COVID battle that are highlighting some of the disparity in our healthcare system that exists and everything.
Well, that's a really important point that you bring up, Mark, because, you having been, being a seasoned journalist and doing many other things too, is that, a lot of people in life, and I've had this happen to me many times where I've been on the streets taking pictures and people get really furious with me over taking a certain picture. Or I remember once I was on a train, I think it was about a year ago, and I was taking a photo of I found it very interesting. There were three people sitting across from me, all women, and one was reading, one was on her one was reading in the middle, and the two on both sides of her were using their smartphones. So I just found it to be a very interesting photo because how our culture is just so digitally oriented now that I found the contrast between two women using their cell phones and the one in the middle totally into her book, very interesting, artsy, nice photo on the New York City subway. So I was taking the photo in a very discreet way without them knowing. So I was holding my phone on my lap, the way you can hold your smartphone, and I had it in position so I know how to do this as a professional, and I was able to take the picture without looking at them directly so they wouldn't know and wouldn't ruin the moment. Well, this woman sees me across from me, and who wasn't one of those three. And as I took another shot, I saw her get very upset with me. You could tell she was getting very flustered and very upset with me because she thought I was doing something. I think she thought I was taking pictures of their legs, or I was trying to take a picture under their skirts or whatever. That's the impression I got. Sure enough, I was right. The minute the doors opened and one of them got off, she turned to the other two and said, "Did you know that this pervert was taking your photos?" And I looked at her and I said, "Ma'am, first of all, you really need to think about what you say before you accuse somebody of something so serious.
Right.
And at least ask what they're doing, or, but don't come out in the crowd and say this pervert was saying you could get me hurt like that, first of all. And second of all, it's just really a horrible accusation. I'm a street photographer. I was taking a very nice photo of these ladies. I was not putting the camera under their skirts. And you have a serious apology to issue to me. And also, I think that was really just wrong." I thought about it. I looked at the ladies. I said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry if I ruined your day for a second there, but I was taking a very artsy photo of you." I said, "Do you have a problem with that?" And she said, "No, I don't have a problem with it." And I turned to the lady who accused me of this and I said, "It's very interesting," as I was getting off the train, "that they're not upset with me, but you are." Wow. I said, "So I think you need to think about things before you act like that again in the future." And to not cause any more problems, I was one stop away from my stop. I actually got off the train and just walked away because I had a feeling this woman was going to take me on and debate me about this, and I didn't want to get into it in a closed car on the New York City subway. So I've been around New York my whole life. I know how to just not encourage, create more problems than they're worth. So I got off the train and I just walked away, and the picture I took was okay, but I didn't even decide to use it afterwards anyway, because it just left a taste in my mouth that the photo wasn't a Pulitzer Prize winning photo and it wasn't something that was going to go down in the history book. So I just kind of I just let it go, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, though, that whole concept of digital and how people do digital now, because I've actually seen, don't think I've been guilty myself being a older single person, but I do know friends of mine that have gone on dates, and I think they spend more time on the phones together than they do actually engage in conversation with each other. I'm like, so are you texting like the other significant other, or what are y'all doing, or texting each other even? Y'all are right across from each other. Y'all really don't need to be texting on the phone.
No, well, let me tell you, it's crazy because you got kids around here that they're actually sitting across from each other and texting each other. It's a little out of control that way. I mean, I'm as hooked to my phone as most people are because it's part of my business, and right. I'm always busy thinking of something and implementing ideas, making connections. I mean, networking is a huge part of what we do, but I pray I don't ever get to the point where I'll be texting somebody across from me.
Yeah, let's hope that's not the case and everything. How important has the networking been to your digital business? Because like I said, I talked to Ron earlier today, and we had a conversation that'll be airing on the podcast as well. Ron Thompson, who is on Shree's show.
Ron, yes.
So just in your own curiosity, how important is networking? We talked a little bit about how important networking is in his business field, and how he even gave some tips as to what he does with networking, like writing notes about people when he gets the information about them and things of that nature.
You're talking about Ron Thomas, I think, right?
Yes, right.
Right, who's one of Shree's sponsors.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I had this is networking and it's part of my DNA, it's part of my life. Everywhere I go, anybody's house, any function, everywhere I go, I walk away with 3 to 5 new people in my world. It's just the way I am. I could go anywhere. I could be on a beach. I could be in the middle of a blizzard. You name it. I'll walk away with 3 to 5 people that I'll have in my life after being involved in a certain situation or being somewhere. So I was at Sri's house right before Christmas. We had just finished doing the read-along at the Museum of the City of New York. Mm-hmm. And we went back to his place afterwards to decompress and have lunch. And it was a little pre-Christmas party. Renee Edelman was there, the Edelman family in New York, the PR agency, and a bunch of other people. And Ron Thomas walks in. I had never met Ron, so it was a real pleasure to meet him. He's an incredible guy, so much knowledge, such a savvy businessman, such an incredible professional, high level guy there. So to answer your question, I met Ron and now we're friends. Networking is a huge part of my life and everything I do because I get really jazzed and I get really, I just love to meet people and hear their stories and trade stories. And I'm what they call in Yiddish in the old days a kibitzer, right? Mm-hmm. I can kibitz with the best of them. I just be talking, and it's part of being a Greenwich Village kid. You grow up kids from anywhere, but at Greenwich Village, there was something about living in a village in the 70s and 80s and 90s. It was such a lively, such a energetic and spirited place that you couldn't live in the village I couldn't live in the village, at least, and not turn out the way I did, which is a consummate networker and people person, And
I've seen a lot of that from people around that New York area. And I'll tell you why the friendship is there, but we're actually somewhat some people would say related, and I'll explain their relationship in a minute, to Leah Sopsey, who is a well-known photojournalist and things of that nature here in the area. But her mother, who's actually the significant other of my dad, is Linda Bellins. And Linda Bellins was very much involved in the New York area and is part of that New York Jewish community and things of that nature, and is now part of the KIPP schools and things along that line. So she's definitely involved in a lot of things around that area. And she's been a part of my dad's life now for probably about 20 years now. So they've actually been, might as well be husband and wife, even though they live their separate existences and things of that nature. But they definitely consider themselves they're each other's partners. And I just see that from both Leah, Adam Sopsey, who's a sports writer and does some other things. And those are Linda's kids. So I've seen that kind of mentality from that background of New York. So I've got that. And I've got some other friends that have come from the New York area, both the African-American community as others. So it definitely seems like that's just part of the New York mentality. What do you
Yeah,
what do you say to
it's
just
just
real
one
quick?
of those. What's that?
What do you say to people that are afraid of New York? Because to me, it's been a minute since I've been up to New York. I need to make a return trip there whenever COVID releases its vice on the country and everything. So I do need to return back to New York and DC and some other places. But I actually love the environment of the city. And even when it's buzzing and crowded, and I know it's not right now because of everybody being under lockdown, but I actually enjoy that kind of environment and going to the museums and things of that nature. But I know others that are intimidated by that. But to me, New York seems to be one of the most photographic cities in the world. I mean,
listen. I live in Ramsey, New Jersey now, so I'm out of the city, but I go back as much as I can because I always have, and no disrespect to where I live up here in the suburbs, but as I always say to people, and it's the God's honest truth, nothing gets done up here networking wise. A little, very little. Everything gets done in the city. So when I go to New York, you know, my creative juices start flowing. My all the little sparks start going off in my head about networking and everything. And I always come back with great ideas, and I always end up meeting people. But you know, New York is interesting because, you know, I'm a born and bred New Yorker, so I'm old school New York, and I also I go back. My family goes back 3 generations in the city, you know. So it's really important for me to always maintain that and keep that true identity. But New York is interesting now because I don't want to slight anybody who lives there now who hasn't been there their whole life. Right. But I will say this, and this is a fact. True blue New Yorkers no longer exist. There are very few. You could probably count them in the dozens, or maybe a few hundred. Let's not get carried away because it is a big city. But the way it used to be, many people live in New York, and New York has become especially Manhattan and Brooklyn, has become a very wealthy, well-to-do enclaves of people. And a lot of people who live there now don't always live in New York. They have an apartment there. They go back and forth. They have other things. Very few born and bred New Yorkers, true blue New Yorkers left. Now, I'm not being this pretentious old school New Yorker that says I'm New York and you're not. But I think to this day that New York still will always have a spirit to it. And people that live there even most of the time still become real great New Yorkers and consider themselves New Yorkers, which they are after a long time. And it takes a hold of them, you know? And I think New York gets a bad rap in a lot of ways, you know, and I think we're seeing a lot of the beauty come out right now, as it does unfortunately with a bunch of tragedies that happened during 9/11. It's happening now where people rise up and they take care of each other and they look out for each other and they do right by each other. So I'm hoping that the big lesson that comes out of this crisis is that people don't forget all of the people, the essential workers. I know everybody's talking about this, but I'll say this as a true blue born and bred New Yorker. I really hope that people don't forget about people, because I got to tell you, they give so many people a hard time in many ways throughout the year, whether it's the MTA workers or other people out there that do all these jobs that many of us wouldn't be able to do because we don't have the energy to do it. We don't have the drive to do it. It's hard work. And, you know, we're doing other things in life, but essential workers out there deserve a lot of the praise, because right now that city would be shut down if it wasn't for them. Shut down. Nobody would be getting their food. Nobody would be taking the trains. The streets would be filthier than filthy. I mean, New York streets are never 100% clean, but they're better than what they used to be. But I think it would be really bad if they weren't around. And we're very lucky, you know, people are very lucky to have them. So I hope that people don't forget that, because people have short-term memories. And I hope they don't forget that and go back to the way they were, you know, and remember how important these people are. And don't just call them heroes now and then forget about it in like a year from now, because hero isn't a thing to throw out there. just because they're helping